What do you do when the last promise someone made to you dies with that person? When you're 6 years old and your father swears your war dog will come home to find you, and then neither of them shows up. Emma Reed spent 5 years learning that some promises are stronger than death, that loyalty knows no impossible, and that sometimes the ones we're told to forget are the very ones that fight hardest to find us. This is the story of a little girl who stopped talking the day 2 soldiers knocked on her door, and a military dog who stopped believing in anything the day his trainer's heart stopped beating. Separated by bureaucracy, distance, and a world that labeled them too broken to be saved, they spent half a decade carrying the same unbearable weight. The ghost of a man who loved them more than life itself. But what happened when Sophia finally found Doghouse C-7, when she stood before a dog that everyone said was beyond help, when she spoke for the first time in 5 years and said 3 words that changed everything? He knows me. We'll remind you why some connections cannot be destroyed, why love is the most powerful form of memory. Keep following this story, because what you are about to witness is not just about a girl and a dog. It's about each of us who has ever lost something we thought we would never survive, and discovered that surviving is different, harder, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. The dust kicked up in clouds around the convoy, turning the Afghan sun into a hazy orange blur. Sergeant Marcus Reed gripped the radio with one hand while the other rested on Rex's thick brown fur. The Belgian Malinois who'd saved his life 4 times in 18 months. They moved like shadows of each other, 2 souls who'd learned to breathe in rhythm. Rex's ears twitched at every sound, his amber eyes scanning the road ahead, and Marcus whispered what he always did before danger. "You and me, boy. Always." The blast tore through the morning like God himself had changed his mind about mercy. Metal shrieked, sand filled the air thick as blood, and Marcus felt his body slam against steel hard enough to crack ribs. Through the ringing that swallowed the world, he heard Rex's frantic barking. Not the alert bark, but something primal, terrified, human. Wet nose pressed against his face, desperate paws scraping at his vest, trying to drag him back from wherever he was slipping. "Good boy," Marcus choked out, each word costing him. "Find Sophia, my baby girl, you tell her." His fingers found Rex's collar one last time, felt the dog's whole body shaking, and then the darkness swallowed everything. When the medics finally strapped Marcus onto the stretcher, Rex became something beyond training, beyond orders. He bit through the first handler's glove, broke the second one's grip, his howls splitting the desert air. A sound so raw that grown men had to look away. They muzzled him, for soldiers dragging him backward while his claws carved desperate trenches in the sand. His eyes locked on the helicopter rising into the smoke. As it disappeared, Rex collapsed. Just collapsed. His sides heaving, his throat torn from screaming, staring at the empty sky like he was watching his soul fly away. Sophia Reed was 6 years old when 2 soldiers in dress uniforms knocked on her door, and she understood before her mother even screamed. She watched from the top of the stairs as Mom crumpled to the floor, watched Grandma catch her before she hit the ground. That night, Sophia climbed into her father's closet, buried her face in his uniform jacket that still smelled like him. Old Spice and gun oil and safety, and made a decision her 6-year-old heart couldn't explain. If words couldn't bring Daddy back, then words were useless. So she stopped. Just stopped. And the silence that filled her throat felt like the only honest thing left in the world. The days blurred into months, and Sophia became a ghost in her own house. She'd sit at the kitchen table drawing pictures of a brown dog. She'd never met Rex, the partner Daddy talked about in every video call, every letter. "He's waiting for you, baby girl," Daddy had promised in that last grainy video, his hand on Rex's head, both of them squinting in the desert sun. "When I come home, you two are going to be best friends." But Daddy didn't come home, and nobody could tell her what happened to Rex. The army said he'd been reassigned. Her mother's eyes went hollow every time Sophia showed her another drawing. "Honey, that dog is probably working with another soldier now. We have to let him go." But Sophia couldn't let go, because Rex was the last piece of her father still breathing somewhere in the world. At school, the other kids stopped trying to talk to her after the first year. At recess, she'd sit alone under the oak tree, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick, imagining Rex doing the same thing somewhere far away, missing the same person, feeling the same emptiness. And every night before sleep, she'd whisper into the darkness the only words she still allowed herself to speak. "I'm going to find you, Rex. I promise." Rex had been at the military kennel for 5 years, 2 months, and 17 days. They'd brought him back from Afghanistan with a medal and a diagnosis. severe PTSD, aggressive tendencies, unsuitable for reassignment. What they meant was broken. He lived in kennel C-7, a concrete box with fluorescent lights that buzzed like flies, and every time a handler walked by, Rex would lunge at the chain link, snarling with everything he had left. Not because he wanted to hurt them, because he needed them to understand. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be with Marcus. At night, he'd press his scarred muzzle against the cold floor and whimper sounds that came from somewhere deeper than his throat. He'd dream he was running through the Afghan desert, Marcus's hand on his collar, both of them unbroken. Then he'd wake to concrete and fluorescent lights, and the emptiness would crash over him fresh. The kennel supervisor had started using words like unadoptable and quality of life. Rex understood tone. He understood finality. On a Tuesday morning in October, something changed. Rex heard a commotion, raised voices, then a sound that made every hair on his body stand up. A child's footsteps coming down the corridor. He pressed against the kennel door, ears forward, heart hammering. The footsteps stopped at C-7, and when Rex looked up, he saw her. A girl with Marcus's green eyes staring back at him through the chain link. She stood there with tears streaming, one hand pressed against the metal. And Rex knew. This child carried Marcus in her DNA, carried his ghost in her eyes. Rex stopped snarling. His tail, still for 5 years, began to move. Just barely. Just enough. The kennel supervisor stood between Sophia and the cage. This dog is dangerous. He's bitten 3 handlers, hasn't let anyone touch him in years. But Sophia wasn't looking at the supervisor. She was looking at Rex, at the way his whole body trembled, at how his ears kept flattening and rising. Her hand reached for the latch. Her mother grabbed her wrist. Sophia, no. But Sophia pulled free, and for the first time since she was 6 years old, she spoke. He knows me. The words hung in the air like a prayer, like a bomb. Sophia's mother gasped, that voice they thought they'd lost forever. Sophia was already sliding the latch open, stepping inside the kennel that every handler entered with bite sticks and leather gloves. Rex backed into the corner, lips pulling back over teeth that had tasted blood. But Sophia didn't stop. She crouched down and pulled something from her pocket, a photograph creased and faded from 5 years of being carried everywhere. Look, she whispered. It's Daddy. It's Marcus. You remember? In the photo, Marcus grinned at the camera, his arm around Rex's neck, both covered in desert dust and alive. So impossibly alive. Rex's ears shot forward. A sound came from his chest, not a growl, but something broken, something that might have been a sob if dogs could cry that way. Sophia inched closer, the photograph extended like an offering. He told me about you, she said, words tumbling out after years of silence. He said you saved him. 4 times. He said you were the bravest thing he ever knew. Rex's nose twitched, catching her scent. And underneath it, the ghost of Marcus in her DNA, in the jacket she wore that used to be his. The trembling intensified. And then Rex took 1 step forward. Then another. His scarred muzzle stretched toward her hand, and when he finally pressed his nose against her palm, Sophia felt him shudder so hard his legs almost gave out. I found you, she breathed, wrapping her arms around his neck while he collapsed against her. I found you, and I'm never letting go. They almost didn't let her take him. The paperwork could have buried them. Liability waivers, behavioral assessments, home inspections. Rex failed every evaluation. But Sophia sat in every meeting, her hand locked in Rex's fur, speaking with a voice that had been silent for 5 years. He's not broken. He's waiting. There's a difference. The car ride took 4 hours. Rex spent every minute curled on the back seat with his head in Sophia's lap, eyes wide like he couldn't believe this was real. Every time they stopped, he'd whimper and try to sit up, panic flooding. But Sophia would press her hand to his chest and talk to him in that voice that sounded like Marcus. She told him about the room she'd prepared, the backyard, the box filled with Marcus's old shirts. You're going to remember him with me, she said. We're going to remember him together. When they pulled into the driveway, Rex wouldn't get out. He sat there, shaking, staring at the house like it might explode. Sophia's grandmother came out, a woman who'd lost her son and watched her granddaughter go silent, and she knelt on the concrete and looked Rex in the eyes. My boy loved you, she said, voice cracking. And now we're going to love you the way he would have wanted. You're home, soldier. You're finally home. Something in Rex's face shifted. He climbed out on trembling legs, let Sophia guide him up the steps, and when he crossed the threshold, his tail wagged. Just once. Just enough to prove that buried under all that trauma, the dog Marcus had loved was still alive. Sophia was 16 when it happened, 10 years after her father died, 5 years after she brought Rex home. Rex had grown old alongside her, his muzzle gone white, his joints stiff on cold mornings, but the wildness had drained from his eyes and been replaced by something she could only call peace. He slept through thunderstorms now. Let her little cousin climb on his back and declare him her horsey. But on this particular Saturday morning, as sun streamed through the kitchen window and Rex lay sprawled on his bed surrounded by their loud, loving family, Sophia saw something that stopped her cold. Rex was smiling. Not the panting that looks like smiling. An actual smile, mouth relaxed, eyes soft and crinkled at the corners, his whole body radiating something that could only be called joy. Sophia's mother noticed her staring and followed her gaze, and the wooden spoon she'd been holding clattered into the sink. "Oh my God," she whispered. They all understood what they were witnessing. A dog who'd spent 5 years convinced he'd lost everything worth living for, who'd been so shattered they'd almost put him down, was lying in a sunbeam in their kitchen, surrounded by people who loved him and choosing happiness. That night, Sophia pulled out the old shoebox from under her bed, the one filled with her father's letters, his dog tags, that creased photograph. She hadn't needed to open it in months, because the grief had transformed into something she could carry without it crushing her. Rex patted over and rested his chin on her knee, and she realized this was her father's final gift. Not the dog itself, but the lesson that love doesn't end when the person does, that sometimes the broken pieces of what we've lost can fit together into something new and beautiful and whole. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. And maybe it was the trick of the lamplight, or maybe it was something more, but she could have sworn Rex's tail thumped twice. The same rhythm Marcus used to tap on his helmet before every mission. A signal between soldiers. A promise kept. Sophia and Rex taught us something the world tries to make us forget, that being broken doesn't mean being finished, that waiting isn't the same as giving up, and that sometimes the love we think we've lost is just taking a different path home. Right now, there's a sheltered dog staring at a door, waiting for someone who won't come. There's a child carrying such heavy pain that they've forgotten how to speak. There's a veteran's promise still echoing somewhere, waiting for someone brave enough to hear it. Sophia was 11 years old when she proved that love is stronger than bureaucracy, that a child's determination can move mountains of paperwork and fear. She not only saved Rex, she saved herself, honored her father, and showed us that the hardest promises to keep are often the most sacred. Maybe you are the second chance someone has been waiting for. Maybe there's a Rex in your city's shelter, considered unadoptable, who just needs someone to see beyond the scars. If this story touched your heart, don't let it close again. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every day we bring you real stories of loyalty, redemption, and the kind of love that refuses to die. In the end, we're all just waiting for someone to fulfill the promise the world said was impossible. Be that person. The Rex in your life is waiting.